We continue with our series of Pirkei Avot. Nevertheless, since we stand at the threshold of the holiday of Shavuot, it becomes primordial to connect Shavuot to that part of Pirkei Avot that we will be studying. Everybody knows that Shavuot is Chag Matan Torah. It's the holiday which is the 6th of Sivan, when the Torah 3,200 years ago was given at the mountain of Sinai, handed by Moses to the people of Israel who came out from Egypt. Since then, the Jewish people, up to today, the Jewish people lives by this Torah, unchanged, unscathed, forever and ever. It is the Torah that fashioned the Jewish people. It is the Torah that made the Jewish people what it is. It is the Torah that elevated the Jewish people above all nations. Whether we Jews confirm it or not, but most of the world knows that, and many of the nations confirm it, some to our benefit, some to our detriment. All this is due to that day when the Torah was given to us. Our sages said that the Torah is a cherished possession of God. It's His knowledge. And He was generous so much to share it with us, to give it to us. So God everywhere tells us through the prophets, כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם, תורתי אל תעזובו. I have given you a good deal, a good acquisition. Never abandon it. The truth, who does appreciate the Torah? Only the people who study the Torah. And the more you study it, the more your appreciation is definite and great. And even Jews who do not study Torah, at least they have the knowledge that tells them that without the Torah we cannot survive. So we know that the Torah not only elevated us to be the chosen nation, but it is the source of our survival. Without the Torah, the Jewish people would not be here today. In fact, without the Torah, the Jewish people wouldn't have survived not even 100 years after Moshe. We would have been extinct long time ago. Because of the Torah, we became special. Everyone knows, even though we don't like to admit it, but Jews are special. Even Jews who do not give too much credit to Judaism by not adhering to it and by not observing it, they know by instinct that the Torah made us special. We are special in the eyes of the world. To most of the world, we are a pain. But at the same time, no one can escape the idea that we are special. Not that we want to be special, not that we want to be chosen, but whether we like it or not, we have been chosen. Like we say every time we go to the Torah, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, venatan lanu et Torato. we bless the Almighty God for having chosen us to give us the Torah. And He gave us the Torah. For that we say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Noten HaTorah. Blessed be the Almighty, the giver of the Torah. Since then, of course, this great event was on a very extraordinary day, as we have mentioned in last lectures, that the whole world attuned to it. That day, all the creatures of the world were quiet, and many did not understand what's going on, and they went to Bil'am, the prophet of the nations, the evil one, and they said to him, what's going on today? The elements of nature are not normal today. And Bil'am said, it is the God of Israel who has chosen his nation, and today he is giving them their Torah. So, as I said, the Torah made us very special, but it is not easy. The Jewish people had to adhere to the Torah as a condition. And it's also the reason for which we have suffered. But there is no question about it that it is the Torah that saved us from all elements. The Jewish people became known for his stubbornness. Am kesha'oref. In which way were we stubborn? We did not relinquish this Torah for no price. They have threatened us with extermination and massacres and pogroms so that we will relinquish our Torah, but it is in fact the Torah that gave us the energy to continue and persevere throughout the generations. The Talmud tells us about Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is one of the greatest Torah scholars of the Talmud. And Rav Yosef said, Ilmale Hayom Ilmale Yomada. If it was not for that great day, which is the 6th of Sivan, the day when we celebrate Shavuot, if it was not for that, Kama Yosef Ika Beshuka. There are so many Yosef all over the world. But I am not like any Yosef. I am a Yosef who knows the Torah. So, I am special, Rav Yosef said. But if it was not for this Torah, big deal. How many Yosef you have? Plenty. You understand the point? The point is, you study Torah, you become special. But it's not the kind of special that one is inclined to have as part of his temptations. It is something that goes without any condition. You are knowledgeable in Torah, you are special. And the more the time towards the Mashiach is going further towards his coming, the more the people who are more knowledgeable in Torah will be more respected and more appreciated. They will be in great demand, because people who know will be required to teach. Because the Torah does tell us that it's not enough to study. It says, لَمَعَنْ يِشْمَعُوا وَيِلْمَئُوا الْمَعَنْ يِلْمَدُوا, so that they will hear and so that they will learn. And our sages said, Al tikre yilmedu ela yelammedu, which means not only to learn but also to teach. Lilmod u lelamed. The truth is that the Torah is in fact the source of life of the whole world. The Prophet says, Im lo beriti yomam v'layla chukot shamayim va'aretz lo samti. God says, if it is not for my covenant, which means the Torah that I gave you, I would not bother create the laws of the universe. From this our sages said, if there is nobody will learn Torah in one day. If let's say one day it happens that no one in the four corners of the earth, no one is studying Torah, at that time the world will crumble to sheer energy, to dust. Of course, most people will say this is fantasy, and they will not believe it. But those who study Torah do believe it. The Jewish people knows that also by instinct. In fact, this is the reason why the nations should respect the Jewish people. Because they survive in the world because of that Torah that we study. And you have no idea how many times in Jewish history when the Goyim wanted to persecute the Jews just so they will stop learning Torah. It's like Satan. The biggest enemy of Satan is the learning of Torah. Satan is not afraid of anything except from the guy who studies Torah. Our sages said that the Torah is the antidote to Satan. And the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin tells us that if Satan comes to you, which means if you have some kind of temptation that will draw you to sin, moshchehu levet midrash. Take Satan with you to the house of study. Im even hu, im barzel hu nimoach, im even hu mitpotzetz. The Talmud says, if he is made of stone, he will be exploded. He will burst. If he is made of iron, he will melt. Because the Satan knows that in the house of study there is not so much Yetzer Hara. The evil inclination doesn't have much to do in the house, in a good yeshiva. Like take for example the yeshiva of Mir, or Lakewood Yeshiva, or Ponivish Yeshiva, or Torah Vadat Yeshiva, and all the good yeshiva that so many of them are throughout the world, and in America also. Satan doesn't have much work to do in those houses. Because as long as he sees people delving into that great well of wisdom that we call the Torah, he retires. He has nothing to do. As our sages said, Satan, where does he go and penetrate? Only in a place where it is empty of Torah. Which mind does he invade? Only that mind which is empty of Torah. That does not mean that a person of Torah does not have evil inclination. Of course he has. He has even more. But as long as he is occupied with the Torah, he doesn't have the time to think about Satan. So this is another great benefit that we learned, that we got from the Torah. The Torah is a great antidote to the evil inclination. It helps us suppress our physical and sometimes animalistic inclinations. The Torah also gives us long life. It elongates your lives. You know why? We can explain this very easily. I'm talking about a person who studies day and night, I mean all the time. This man, this Talmid Chacham, the Torah scholar, doesn't have much time to spend in futile things. He doesn't have the time to fight with his wife. He doesn't have the time to bother with problems of business. Whatever it is, he takes food the way it is served. A real Talmid Chacham would take a little and that's it. He doesn't bother too much with the things of this world. So therefore, he doesn't have the anxiety of the world. As our sages said in Pirkei Avot, En lecha ben chorin, ela mi she'osek b'Torah. Who is the true free man? Is a person who is busy constantly with Torah. Why? Because when you are completely immersed in Torah, you are free from anything else. You are even free from taxes. Our sages say that. You are even free. Nobody will even ask you to come and to be volunteer to build, let's say, a wall in times of dangers or something like this. Why? Because the believers say, we prefer the guy who studies to keep on studying. I mean, you know who said that? Remember the name Moshe Dayan? The General Moshe Dayan? You know, during the 6 Days War, him and Yitzhak Rabin became very famous. Of course, Moshe Dayan was already famous by then, as both the generals of the army of Israel. They brought upon themselves tremendous glory. But then a few days later, I remember I was present there. We went in Jerusalem to a big hall called Binyanei HaUmmah, right near Eged, the bus station. It's a beautiful building, big building. That's where you have the opera and things. And there about 3,000 people gathered because Moshe Dayan was to speak. And after he made his speech, he asked for questions. And the place was full of students of the University of Jerusalem. Maybe you could see one or two kippot. I'm talking about 1967. After the 6 Days War, which erupted this week, in fact, the 6th of June. And you know what happened? Moshe Dayan was not a religious man at all. Not at all. But perhaps at the spur of the moment, he had some good sense. You know, 3 days after the beginning of the 6 Days War, the soldiers of Israel went into Jerusalem, the old Jerusalem, and conquered Jerusalem. For the first time in 2,000 years, we got back the Kotel HaMa'aravi, the Wall of Lamentations. Lo and behold, here comes Moshe Dayan himself, surrounded by thousands of soldiers, and all of them emotionally taken and shaken by the wall of Beit HaMikdash. And they went there with tremendous emotion. And you know what Jews do when they go to the Kotel? They all take a piece of paper and they write a little prayer and they insert it in one of the holes there on the wall. So Moshe Dayan apparently wanted also to follow the tradition. So he took a piece of paper and he wrote something. So there was a curious guy who came behind him, and after he left, he took the little paper to see what he wrote.
To check.
And he wrote, what was that he wrote? He quoted from the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms, one famous verse. Me'et Adonai haytazot hi niflat be'enenu. This is a verse that we say every time we read the Hallel. Like tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh of Sivan, Tavshin Samechet. And tomorrow we will recite the Hallel after the silent prayer. And in the Hallel it says, Me'et Adonai haytazot hi niflat be'enenu. From God this had happened. It is something that is marvelous for us. That's a quotations from King David, and that's what General Dayan, the so-called atheist, what he wrote at the spur of the moment when the spirits were high, at that time when they conquered the wall finally. So he wrote, he admits that this came from heaven because it was a spectacular victory, an unbelievable victory. But that's not what I mean to convey to you now. What I like to tell you is what happened after about 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, there was a very big gathering as I said before, at the Binyanei HaUmmah, that's a big hall in Jerusalem. Over 3,000 university students, and then not too many religious were among them. And I went to listen to Moshe Dayan. And he spoke. And then he asked for questions. And one of the students got up and he said, General, why is it that the people who study in yeshiva, they don't go to the army? That's a common question that always, again and again, it's brought back again. It has caused many things in the political life of the deputy members of the Knesset. And everybody applauded the young man. That's an anti-Torah question.
Good question.
Maybe it's a good question. It requires perhaps an explanation. But the guy, when he asked this question, it's because, especially in those days, the atmosphere was not that really, it's not like today when many are religious Jews and the atmosphere is more or less more religious. But then people were anti-religious. So they were looking at, the fact that the people who go to yeshiva didn't go to the army was an arrangement that was made between the religious party and Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel. As soon as the establishment of the state of Israel was inaugurated, then one of the greatest rabbis of this generation is known by his title, the Chazon Ish. His real name is Rabbi Yeshayahu Karlitz. So he went representing all the religious factions, and he practically demanded from Ben Gurion to agree that as long as the young people go to yeshiva to study Torah, they should not be under the obligation to go to the army. And then the second request was that the religious girls should not go to the army. Both demands were agreed. And he signed, Ben Gurion signed, and since then, until today, that's exactly the law. Of course, then there were not too many yeshiva students. There were only a few thousand, 6,000. But today, yeshiva students count in the 100,000, so perhaps, so that gives much more voice to the anti-religious people. To tell them, well, 100,000 young men, that's very much necessary for the army of Israel. The truth is that the believer believes that we survive because of the Torah. So we need another army. The Jews, in order to win, they need two armies. One army that fights and one army that studies. If you don't believe, then what can I do? So they asked this question to Moshe Dayan. And again, Moshe Dayan was not religious at all. But what was the answer that he gave? And everybody applauded the young man for at least 3 seconds. And Moshe Dayan answered. He said, they say, what he means by they means the religious people. The religious people say that because of them we win. It was after the spectacular victory of the army of Israel against all the armies of the Arabs in 6 days. You know what they did? So Moshe Dayan, perhaps still in that type of atmosphere, so he answered, they say that we win because of them. Now, he said, maybe they are right. Do we have anybody that can prove that they are wrong? Maybe they are correct. Maybe we are correct. But nobody knows. So what do you want me? There is a doubt here. Would you like me to jeopardize the state of Israel just in case we are wrong and perhaps the religious are correct? Maybe they are right, and because of them we win, because those who study Torah, because of them we win. I wouldn't want to jeopardize the state of Israel because of a few thousand yeshiva people. You know what happened? While the answer pleased me, I was among all the students there. What pleased me no end was that the answer drew the applause of all the 3,000 people who were present there, who did not stop applauding for 3 minutes. See what is the meaning of being a Jew? A Jew, that's the way he is. He will show you how much he is anti and he's against. But tell him the right thing, coming from the right mouth. The proper mouth, in this case Moshe Dayan. And then you will discover the real heart of the Jew. All of them, I'm telling you, 99% of those present there were not religious at all. And yet they applauded the answer of Moshe Dayan no end. They agreed with him. Of course, this was only at that time. Later, when the atmosphere recedes and the emotions are quiet and the impression has vanished, so of course the antagonistic people are going to come back again and always attack. But you have to understand that Moshe Dayan was correct. We at least believe that because of the Torah we survive. If it was not for the Torah, it's impossible that we can win that war at that time when they had great armies, the Arabs, and we were still just beginners. Today, unfortunately, the whole world says, we are the strongest army in the Middle East. By the way, it's not true. But that's how it looks. But in the time of the 6 Days War, I still remember the demonstrations in Cairo, in Egypt. Millions of Arabs were demonstrating when Nasser, the president of Egypt, when he was proclaiming, we are going to exterminate the Jews and destroy the state of Israel. And they were they were so sure that they will swallow us in 2 minutes. Indeed, that's what happened in 6 hours only. It was us who have practically demolished them in the first 6 hours. Now, of course, since then, we have gone through all kinds of peripecias, which means we do win the wars, but to a certain cost. But we're still going on. I mean, they say that the last war they won. Don't make me laugh. They didn't win. But let them think this way, that's okay. We are not. You see, the Arabs, they live by vapor, by smoke. We live by the truth. Consider yourself, you win. Okay, you won. The truth is that there was nothing left in Lebanon when Israel finished with them. I mean, in that section of Lebanon where the Hezbollah was. But it did cost. And the Jewish cost is not easy for us to bear. Every Jew is so important. The Arabs kill each other by the thousands. They don't give a damn. But for us, as you have heard probably this week, remnants, pieces of some of the few bodies that were left in Lebanon since the last war, finally Hezbollah agreed to give us back a few remnants. They could not even be identified only after several days of DNA searching. Why? We want even the last drop of blood of the Jew to come back to us. That's the Jewish people. That's the meaning of being chosen. But at the same time, what gave us this great chosenness, which is a tremendous responsibility? The Torah. Why do I say responsibility? Because the Jew has no choice. He has to always exercise his Judaism, which means a Jew cannot be a thief, a Jew cannot be a murderer. If there is one Jew that kills, it's already a terrible spot on all the Jewish people. One Jew, it says, one Jew commits something, all the Jewish people is to be accused of the same crime. This happened also in the history of the Jewish people, as we find in the Bible. Haman was angry at Mordechai. That made him decide to destroy all the Jewish people. And that's the way it is. Because Jews have no choice but to appear elevated. Not that they should be arrogant, God forbid. Quite the contrary. But in their deeds, they should be distinguished from the nations. Because as the Prophet says, we are the guide light of the nations. And the nations look upon us this way. They don't look for guidance, but they know that the Jew has no choice but to be above. One day, even those who do not understand that will understand it. That's the reason why in Pirkei Avot, that paragraph which we should have started tonight will be started anyway with the words of Shimon HaTzadik, Shimon the righteous, who said, Al shelosha devarim ha'olam omed, al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut chasadim. The whole world stands on 3 pedestals. But the first one is the Torah. He says, the world is based on Torah, Avodah, which means the worship of God, the prayers. In the ancient time means the korbanot, the sacrifices. In general it means Yirat Shamayim, the fear of God. And the third foundation, the third base, is Gemilut Chasadim, loving kindness, charity, good deeds between one and another. Thus, upon these 3 concepts, upon these 3 foundations, the whole world stands. But it starts with the Torah. Remove the Torah, there is no world. Of course, if there is Torah and there is no charity, it's also a very big loss for the world. The world will not be able to withstand the intensity of the Lord if there is no kindness and charity between people. As everybody knows, even Yom Kippurim, which is the day of God, which God gave us with great generosity for total forgiveness, except the sins that we commit against each other, such as insulting, hurting the feelings, robbing and stealing, lying, lashon hara, and all this. So the fact that we are nice to each other is part of Gemilut Chasadim, loving kindness. But what interests us tonight is that first word. Shimon HaTzadik, who was the last remnant of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the people of the Great Assembly, said the world stands on 3 foundations, and the first one is the Torah. Without the Torah, the world cannot survive. It says in the Midrash, when God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, He turned to all the nations. You know, God is very generous. He doesn't want to favor people. So He gave the opportunity to the nations to receive the Torah. He went to the nation of Esav, and He said to them, would you like to receive my Torah? Their reaction was, what's written there? Ma ketiv ba. A legitimate question. And God says, what is written there, it says, well, do not murder. They said, we cannot. Our survival is based on killing. As our father Esav said, ve'al harbecha tihyeh, that was the blessing of Yitzchak bestowed upon Esav, that you should live by the sword. So, sorry, we cannot receive the Torah. God says, bye-bye, I'll go to the other nations. He went to the nation of Ishmael. Would you like to receive my Torah? And Ishmael did the same mistake. by asking what's written there, maktiv ba. And God says, lo tignov, do not steal. They said, it's impossible. Our well-being is only from Yadoba Kolvi at Kolbo. Our father Ishmael was blessed by the angel as he takes everything. That's the way of Ishmael. Whatever is his, and whatever is yours is his also. His hands is upon everything. Don't you see how the Arabs behave all the time? Give them more, they will ask for more. And they'll never appreciate what you give. They are the most ingrate people there is in the world. So ungrateful, it's unbelievable. All you have to do is open your eyes and watch. It's amazing. Even this week, stupid Olmert is talking with Syria to make peace with them, and is willing to give them Ramat Golan, the Golan Heights. And he says, okay, we are willing to deliver. And the Golan Heights is the most, as a defensive place for us, it is primordial for our survival. And yet he says, okay. So what did Assad, the president of Syria, says? Okay, give us the Golan, but you have to add also some parts of the Kinneret. Whatever you give in, you are going to be requested for more. That's the Arab. Yadobat kol viat kolbo. So they said, we cannot receive the Torah. God says, thank you very much, bye-bye. Anyway, God, he knew that they are not going to receive the Torah. But our sages said, why did he offer it to them? Because there will be one day in the future that they will say, well, we are not to blame, because if you gave us the Torah like you gave your people, we would be also good. So Hashem says, I will not give them the opportunity to come up with this kind of statement, because I will offer it to them. Let the denial come from them. Okay. I think Ishmael heard me. Then he went to the nation of Moab. And he said to them, nation of Moab, would you like to receive my Torah? And they said, what's written there? He says, well, God says what is written there is, do not commit adultery. They said, we cannot receive the Torah. Our inception came from adultery. The daughters of Lot with their father. Which was only an excuse for the nation not to receive the Torah. But in fact, this is what God also knew. And he says, bye-bye, thank you very much. When he went to Israel, he says, would you like to receive my Torah? They did not make the mistake to ask what's written there. They said, na'aseh venishma. We shall do, and then later we will learn. Which means we accept the Torah the way it is, and then later we will learn the details. And our sages say in the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, at that minute when Israel declared, na'aseh venishma, we shall do and learn later, a heavenly voice came out and said, Mir gila razeh levanai. Who revealed the great secret to my children? What great secret? That the only way to receive the Torah is by first accepting it. Even if you go to a Jew and tell him, come and learn Torah, and he will ask you, first I like to see what's there, he's not serious. First let him come and learn, and later if he has questions, there will be different questions. There is a story of Rabbi Salanter. One day he was accosted by a young man, and he asked him all kinds of questions about the universe and about God. So Rabbi Salanter said to him, you know what? You have too many questions, but I promise you that in 1 year, if you follow my advice and go to yeshiva for 1 year, just 1 year, after 1 year I will come to you and I will answer any question that you have. Yes, I have thousands of questions, all of them, but give me 1 year. Fine. And the young man went to the yeshiva and he learned, Baba Metziah, a volume of the Talmud that has to do with the damages and laws of damages. After a year, Rabbi Isai Salanter came to him and he said, "My boy, as I promised, I am here to listen to your questions." And the young man said, "Rabbi, I have no more questions." Even though what he learned has nothing to do with the questions that he asked. But those questions did not bother him anymore because he has tasted the taste of Torah. When he learned Gemara, even though it has nothing to do with relevancy, we just finished, a week ago, we finished the Talmud, a tractate that's called Masechet Nazir. The whole volume has nothing to do with today. And it's a mind-breaking study. Every night you had to sweat. For what? For something that is not relevant today. But try it, and then you will discover the great wisdom of the Talmud, which is the wisdom of God, relevant or not. That's what he did with that guy. He went, he learned in the yeshiva, they were learning Baba Metzia. It's nothing to do with questions of the universe. It has to do with laws of damages and finances. But it's Torah. After 1 year, go ahead, ask me questions. He said, I have no more questions. They don't, which means he still has a question, but of course. He probably doesn't know the answer to all the questions, but they don't bother him anymore. Once he tastes the taste of Torah, when he feels in his heart the sweetness of Torah, then no question will bother you. Maximum, you don't know the answer, then you know. Like our sages said, Imrek hu mikem. If it's empty, it's because of you. You learn more and you will know. But right now, so many people make this mistake. Because he doesn't understand. So, why should I learn this? Anyway, it doesn't make sense to me. What sense? I have a neighbor like this, who tells me, what kind of law is this? On Shabbat, not to separate things. What kind of laws is this? I told him, if you want to know the answer, come and learn. I told him, I promise you, after a year, he will understand. Not that he will understand the answer. He will understand that it will not bother him no more. And that's the marvel of the Torah. And that Torah was given to us on the day of Shavuot. And the Jewish people in our history, so many people who gave their life for the Torah. Everybody knows the story of Rabbi Akiva. Shall I tell you again the story of Rabbi Akiva as a conclusive part of our lecture? Rabbi Akiva lived about 2,000 years ago. As a young man, he was illiterate. He was an employee of one of the richest men of Jerusalem, Kalba Sabua. And he was he took care of the herds of Kalba Sabua. He would take them in the wilderness, that's what he did. He didn't know even how to write nor to read. But he was a very smart young man. One day, he was already 4 years old. And he used to hate the sages of Torah. When somebody doesn't know something, he hates that which he doesn't know. There is such a thing in psychology. Why do you think the nations hate us? Jealousy. Because they know they cannot be what we are. Since they cannot be, so they hate. Well, that's already a different question. So our sages said that Akiva then, he used to hate the sages of Torah. He used to state, he said, Mi telli talmid chacham v'anashchenu kachamor. Give me one Torah scholar and I will bite him like a donkey. It's a famous statement in the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. But he was very smart. He was a genius, naturally a genius. But he didn't know Torah. One day, when he was in the wilderness with his sheep, and all the cattle that he had, that belonged, of course, to his master, to his employer, Kalba Sabua, the richest man of Jerusalem. And the richest man of Jerusalem, Kalba Sabua, had only one daughter, and her name was Rachel. And she was going to inherit the extraordinary fortune of her father. But then she saw Akiva, and she allowed herself to walk with him a little, and she was discussing with him. And she realized that the man is brilliant in his mind, but she was overtaken by the fact that he doesn't know Torah. In those times, even the rich people reserved their daughters only for Talmidei Chachamim, for Torah scholars. So she was reserved for Talmidei Chachamim. How lucky is the Talmid Chacham who would take her, because he would become very, very rich. But when she had several conversations with Akiva, she fell in love with him. And then she said to him, why don't you learn Torah? A mind like this and you don't learn Torah? Crazy. He said, I'm already 4 years old, and I'm not going now to learn Torah. It's not for me. So she kept on after him every day, day by day. Finally she said to him, if you go to learn Torah, I will marry no one but you. He was overwhelmed. Of course she was beautiful and everything, and he also wanted her, but he wouldn't even dare thinking about her.
How old she was?
How old she was? Young enough.
He was 4.
He was 40.
Oh, 40.
He was 40 years old. So she left him like this. And now he was meditating day after day. He was thinking about this possibility and then thinking about Torah. How can I start learning? I don't know anything. I'm already 4 years of age. While he was going in the wilderness, he saw a big stone, marble, that there was water dripping from it and falling on marble, on a rocky marble. And that drop of water, after centuries falling in the same place, made a beautiful hole in the marble, which is the hardest substance. So Akiva said, oh my, if water that is so soft was able to make a hole in the hardest of all substance, then even though I am 40 years old, I still will be able to learn maybe. You know, Torah is likened to water, and this water that we call Torah can penetrate this rock of mine. And he went to yeshiva. An old man. And he went among children. And I am sure he was embarrassed many times. But our sages said he did not open his mouth for 7 years. They all thought, an old guy comes, and that's it. But after 7 years he began to open his mouth, and everybody realized that this man is a genius. After 12 years, I'm sure you know, 12 years that he spent in that yeshiva, he was already a great man. So he came back home. When he came back home, before he entered his house, in the meantime his wife was rejected by her father for choosing a shepherd. And she had to live by selling her own hair. And she had to sleep on straw. And that's it. After she lived like a princess in a palatial place owned by her father. 12 years she was all alone, raising a child of his. She didn't see her husband for 12 years. So he was coming to see his beloved, thinking that he's back now home after 12 years. But before he entered, he heard his wife having a conversation with her neighbor. And the neighbor was saying, what kind of husband you have? 12 years he left you like this. What kind of responsibility is this? What kind of a husband is that? And he heard his wife answering, You think my husband is nobody? I wish he would stay another 12 years in the yeshiva, and I still will be loyal to him and will welcome him when he comes back after 12 years, another 12 years. When Rabbi Akiva heard this, he was afraid to go in, and then he will have to stay, because it's not easy to separate from his love. He heard this, he went back to yeshiva for another 12 years. 24 years of Torah that made him our master forever and ever. Rabbi Akiva, surrounded with 24,000 students. He is the glory of the Talmud. There is not one page in the Talmud that you don't encounter the genius of Rabbi Akiva. And yet, because of the Torah, he gave his life when he was 120. Of course, the story goes on that late now he's very famous all over Israel. And one day, when he was coming to Jerusalem, there was a tremendous reception in honor of Rabbi Akiva. There was a parade. The great rabbi is coming, the great rabbi is coming. And all the richest people were there. And among them, of course, his father-in-law. But among the people, in the throngs of the people, there was an old woman, a frail-looking woman, who was trying to find her way in, to get closer to see her husband. And that's Rachel. So the people were pushing her back. Women, stay aside. And Rabbi Akiva from far, he noticed her and he said, stop, because give her way, because my Torah and your Torah, my students, is because of her. And he gave her, as promised 24 years before, a bracelet of gold upon which this inscription was engraved, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. Remember the song Yerushalayim Shel Zahav? We did discuss this in the past. Yerushalayim of gold. And that was the first gift of Rabbi Akiva, when his father-in-law, he didn't even recognize him. But when he saw Rabbi Akiva, he said, they told him, that's your son-in-law, the husband of that daughter of yours that you have rejected. He almost fainted. And then he swore that all his fortune will be given to Rabbi Akiva. And that's how Rabbi Akiva became the richest rabbi of all the rabbis. At the end, at the age of 120, he was, of course, as you know, he was held by the Romans. And the Romans then had a terrible edict against the Jews that anybody who studies Torah will be executed to death. And Rabbi Akiva did not obey, of course. He was old, and he was taken to prison. And on the day of his death, the Romans allowed his students to come and watch the execution. So they said to him, Rabbeinu, how can we tolerate to see you? They were practically killing him slowly with combs of iron, but practically cutting him to pieces. And they said, Rabbi, how is it possible that the Torah did not defend you? Is this the Torah and its reward? He said to them, my children, be happy for me. All my life I had one big ambition, and that is to have the opportunity to give my life for the Lord. As we say in Kriyat Shema, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבביך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. You have to love Hashem even with all your soul. And our sages said, אפילו בשעה שנוטל את נפשך. Even at that time when they are taking your soul, you have to show your love to Him. And he said to them, all my life I never had the opportunity. Now that I have the opportunity, you are protesting? I am happy. And he died when he was saying, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And his life from this world was gone, and he was welcomed in paradise among the greatest tzaddikim. And for us he became immortal. Rabbi Akiva became immortal. Rabbi Avigdor Miller used to say, how do you want Rabbi Akiva to die? A man like him to die in bed is not it would be a lousy death. A death like Rabbi Akiva made him immortal forever and ever. We live by Rabbi Akiva. But he lived by the Torah, and he left us a disciple, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. who also was persecuted because of his Torah learning. So many generations our enemies have stopped us from learning Torah, and the Jewish people persevered and stubbornly continued to study the Torah because they knew that the Torah is our source of life. Like the Talmud tells us, and I will conclude with this, that there was once a fox, and the fox was running at the river, at the edge of a river, and he saw the fish swimming very, very quickly. And he said to them, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" They said to him, "Because the fishermen are behind us, they are trying to catch us." So the fox said to them, "What's the problem? Come out with me and I'll protect you." They said to him, "You idiot. They say about you that you are the smartest of all the animals, you are the stupidest of all the animals. In this place, in the water where it is our source of life, we are in danger. You want us to go out when we will die definitely?" So that's exactly what Rabbi Akiva says to a certain gentleman by the name Papos ben Yehuda in prison. He said to him, because Papos complained that Rabbi Akiva should have stopped learning Torah, this way he would save his life. He says, "What are you talking about? The life of the Jew is on the Torah. That's the only way we can live. Now even like this we are in danger. Now you want us to be without Torah when we'll definitely die?" Of course you have to understand this answer. But the answer is, as we said before, the day of Shavuot is the day it's the day that made us special. That's the day when the Torah was given to us, and the Torah made the Jewish people what it is. And the Torah made us elevated above all the nations. At the same time, the Torah made us immortal. We became immortal. The Jew does not die. So I wish everyone to understand and believe in what we said here, so that the Torah, which is the inheritance of every Jew, as it says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov, should be the inheritance of everyone. And everyone should try to learn Torah, even just a little. Don't let one day pass with at least some thought of Torah. Like our sages say in the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot, Kol mi sheyesh bo or Torah mechayehu. Even if you have a spark of Torah, that spark will be enough to give you life. Like we say, Ki hi chayecha ve'orech yamecha. The Torah is our life and the length of our days. So we wish a happy Shavuot to everyone, and Chag Sameach Umvorach, and may the blessing of the Torah be upon each one of us. Amen.
Amen.